In April 1986, there was a big explosion at a nuclear power plant in Chernobyl. They were doing a test that went very wrong and caused a big problem in reactor block 4. It was the worst nuclear accident ever seen up to that time. After the explosion, there was a fire, and it made the radiation in the area much worse. The damage from this accident was really bad beyond imagination. Following the accident, a big portion of the area that used to be part of the Soviet Union, and is now in northern Ukraine, was closed off to keep people safe. The people in charge knew about the dangers of radiation sickness. Many of them had lived through World War II and heard about what happened in Hiroshima. People were hurt, and they had to get better after this big disaster. People were really worried and anxious when they found out about the accident. The ones in charge had to respond quickly and make people less scared that the whole continent might become unlivable. At the same time, however, they'd also had to make it clear that part of their territory would indeed be unsuitable for housing and agriculture for an indefinite period of time. The Ukrainian people needed to know that Chernobyl was not safe. If they went into the restricted zone, even a short stay would almost certainly affect their health. So the country set up a restricted zone for the public. Most people willingly stayed away from the area for fear of radiation and the feared possibility of developing cancer. For many people, the images and stories of the poor victims were the only deterrents needed to stay away from the area. However, there were also some people who tried to enter the Chernobyl area, usually under the guise of morbid curiosity. Radiation levels in the area have dropped over the years. However, given the unprecedented incident, people are still being warned not to enter the area. However, there was one thing the authorities couldn't and still can't keep out of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, and that was the wildlife. There were even reports of deformed livestock and animals born as a result of the disaster. Academics who made their way to the site, despite the safe distance, devoted themselves to studying the animals of Chernobyl after the accident. This presented a major challenge as how could they survey the area without endangering their own health. Thanks to human ingenuity, scientists were able to come up with some creative solutions. The researchers either wore special protective equipment or observed the animal world with cameras or drones. The snow tracks also helped the scientists to draw conclusions about the animal world. They found evidence that native animals move around the country quite normally. Scientists were happy to find traces of all the usual suspects. It was very encouraging to see that the animals still considered Chernobyl their natural habitat. However, they wanted to keep a close eye on the animals to check for mutations or other health problems. Over time, scientists were able to set up cameras and capture all passing animals on film. This was an important step in giving researchers a better view of the animals they were observing and studying. They quickly found evidence that deer and foxes were passing through. The population of both species slowly began to regenerate. This information was incredibly encouraging and pointed to a possible future when Chernobyl could fully recover from the power plant explosion. After the success of these findings, the scientists proposed a project to promote biodiversity in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Many people agreed that this was the best solution, and so a so-called National Reserve for Biological Diversity was established. It was essentially a continuation of the measures that kept people from visiting Chernobyl. Things seemed to be going well for the animals, so the wisest thing to do was to continue to give them the space and time to recover. Flora grew and fauna migrated throughout the sanctuary, enjoying the newly created solitude. The dangers of radiation and the imponderables of nuclear technology may have weighed heavily on the air for people. But the animals continued to live there and were attracted even by the complete absence of people. Chernobyl again became their territory, where they could spend their lives peacefully. There weren't many places in the modern world that were undisturbed by man. Over time, the area began to regenerate, and nature took its course. The plants reformed, and the animals returned to their natural habitats. However, no one was sure what would happen to them. Would flora and fauna that had absorbed radiation develop health problems? Scientists were constantly on the lookout for signs of mutations or signs of tumor growth. Beyond the scope of science, curiosity about the health and condition of these animals caught the attention of many people. Around the globe, people have been fascinated by the Chernobyl recreation. After all, it was one of the first times that we were able to investigate the consequences of a nuclear explosion practically on site. Researchers found that the population of Ukraine's wild boar, roe deer, and fox actually increased, despite the many theories that the health and population of the animals would decline sharply. In fact, the animals reproduced faster than the radiation could end their lives. Even years after the explosion, people respected the restricted zone that had become an animal reserve. Perhaps for the first time in history, people patrolled the area with great care while leaving it as undisturbed as possible. All of these circumstances resulted in a huge chunk of land having the space to develop at its own natural pace. This pattern has continued for many years, and the outcomes have surprised people all over the world. Surprisingly, despite the significant damage in northern Ukraine, various animal species have made a comeback, and their populations have actually grown since the accident. Scientists think this unexpected revival of wildlife in Ukraine happened because animals came back to the area from faraway places. Researchers found several animal species in the Chernobyl region that hadn't been seen there for many years. These include brown bears, black furs, European lynxes, and bison. One interesting thing is that a frog changed its color from green to black to better fit into the new environment. The evidence we have strongly suggests that humans are a bigger threat to wildlife than radiation. What do you think about these discoveries? Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you.